Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTG Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is When Walls Attack for Modern. Now on Fan Friday, we actually ran a deck list that was a Assault Formation deck, like we're about to show right now, submitted by Nathan Ball, I believe. It was a really fun deck, and I did definitely want to go over a tweaked list and talk about it here on the channel, because I thought it was super spicy. Of course, if you guys don't know, let's go over Assault Formation first. It's a 2-mana enchantment. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. You can pay 1 green mana, target creature with Defender can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender, and you can pay 3, creatures you control get +0/+1 until end of turn, which is kind of amazing. So what that means is we want to build a deck around a bunch of 0/5, 0/6s, things like that, that are actually in the deck that are super powerful once Assault Formation hits the battlefield. But of course, before I get into the video itself, make sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that bell to notify you when we upload a video on the channel and when we go live on stream right here on YouTube. So let's get right into it, starting with creatures first. First up, we have 4 Birds of Paradise. This is a 1 green mana 0/1 bird with flying. We can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. So we really want to be able to kind of like ramp as quickly as humanly possible in the deck, and Birds of Paradise is going to help us do that. While our curve is quite low, with like most of our cards being in the 2 and 3 mana slot, all Birds of Paradise is here for is to make sure we get out Assault Formation and another Defender wall out as quickly as possible. Moving up here, we have Fortified Rampart. This is a 4/2 2 mana 0/6 wall with Defender. Of course, again, Assault Formation assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, so a 0/6 for 2 actually is like a 6/6 for 2 mana with Assault Formation on the battlefield, so kind of watch out for that. It's amazing. I believe there was only 2 of in Nathan's deck here, but I did like putting it up to a complete 4 of. There was a Fog Wall, I believe, in the deck, or Fog Bank, something like that. I think Fortified Rampart is a much better fit and lower to the ground, as well as just being a powerhouse if we can get it out on turn 2. Next up, to make sure we can ramp some more, we have Sylvan Caryat. This is also an interesting card for us because it's a 2 mana 0/3 Defender hexproof, so it's a hexproofing creature that's basically a 3/3 for us with Assault Formation on the battlefield once we pay that green mana. And it can also tap and add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool, which is very good too. Moving up here, we have 4 Wall of Omens. Another great wall for us. It's a 2 mana 0/4 wall with Defender, and when it enters the battlefield, we can actually draw a card too. So it's actually kind of giving us a little bit of a card advantage, thanks to being also just a 2 mana 0/4. So a 2 mana 4/4 with Assault Formation on the battlefield, I'll take it. Again, it's like super interesting. Without Assault Formation, this deck is dead in the water, so we definitely want to make sure that combo kind of works. Even though it's not technically a combo, it's basically just an enchantment, but as soon as it hits the battlefield, our deck is online and ready to rumble. Moving on here, we have 2 Eternal Witness. We definitely want our Assault Formation to be on the battlefield at all times, and if our opponent does get to have the ability to destroy it, we want to make sure we have a way to get it back from the graveyard. So Eternal Witness is a 2/3 mana 2/1 Human Shaman, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Most likely that's going to be an Assault Formation. If not, it might be a Path to Exile or a Serum Vision, something like that we'll talk about in just a minute. Moving on here to another card, we have Hover Barrier. This is a 3/3 mana 0/6 Defender with flying. So the best part about Hover Barrier here is that it's a flying creature, so get out Assault Formation on turn 2, get out a Hover Barrier on turn 3 if you can help it, attacking for 6 in the air in turn 4, that's really powerful, and that's going to win you games. I really do think that Hover Barrier is probably one of the best creatures we actually have in this deck list here. Moving up though, we have 2 of Wall of Denial. This is another amazing card for us, but we can't use it in the same way we kind of want to with Hover Barrier. This is a 3 mana 0/8 2 of Wall with Defender, flying, and Shroud. If it had hexproof, this would be so much better, but it has Shroud instead. So Shroud means this creature can't be the target of spells or abilities. That includes Assault Formation, so we can't actually attack out with a Defender, flying, hexproof 0/8. We can only use this as a blocker for us. However, Assault Formation can have its ability where it assigns combat damage to toughness rather than its power, still be put to use with Wall of Denial, which means if our opponent does attack into us, we have a 0/8 to deal 8 points of damage to whatever they're attacking in with. And that in and of itself is good enough to make sure that Wall of Denial is in the deck list. And the last creature in here is kind of a meme, really, but it's actually a very good card for this particular deck. This is Tree of Redemption. This is a 4 mana 1/0/13 Defender. We can actually tap it too and exchange your life total with Tree of Redemption's toughness. We're not going to use that really at all unless we actually have a lot of mana to pump up with Assault Formation. Keep in mind, Assault Formation's secondary ability is we can pay 3 mana and give something +0/+1, which means we can actually strengthen Tree of Redemption's like toughness, which is kind of interesting. But but we're just probably going to pay the 1 green mana and make sure Tree of Redemption can actually attack in with 13 points of power at our opponent. So keep in mind, if Tree of Redemption does not have an answer, you can actually just use its ability to trade its life total with ours, which is not bad either, but also Tree of Redemption is just a super powerful bomb attacker if we actually have like the free mana and the turn to do it. And also it's kind of just here for memes. That's one thing Nathan had in here and I thought it was cute, and so I kept it in here too. Moving on to spells though, that's all the creatures. We have 23 in total. We have Path to Exile. So there are a lot of creatures in the modern format at the moment that we want to make sure are exiled. That means Tarmogoyf, that means Bloodbraid Elf, that means, you know, Giant Eldrazi, Tron stuff, just a bunch of nonsense. We want to make sure Path to Exile is a complete 4 of in the main board here. It's a 1 mana instant, exile target creature. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. One of the best pieces of advice about Path to Exile this here is that we don't want to be like giving our opponent free lands on turn like 2 through 5, because that really does ramp our opponent up much more quickly than ourselves. So unless it's a huge threat against us, we want to make sure Path to Exile is used, you know, turn 4 through 6, 7, stuff like that, if we can last that long. And with a defender deck like ours, you know we're going to last that long. Moving on from our removal though, we have 4 Serum Visions. This is a great way to kind of hunt for our assault formation. This is a 1 blue mana sorcery, draw a card and scry 2, basically giving us the ability to kind of draw 3 cards if we can. And like I said, this is used specifically to get assault formation, really nothing else. So if we don't get assault formation with the draw card or the scry 2s, we want to make sure that those scries are bottomed so we can get into assault formation as quickly as possible, unless it's already on the battlefield. Moving on to some counter magic in blue, we actually have 2 of Negate. This is a 2 mana instant counter target non-creature spell. So the original creator of this deck actually had a Cryptic Command in this slot. I think that's probably a better fit for sure. I just kind of wanted to bring the price down a little bit in this deck list and see if it's a little bit more in our range as far as like a budget deck list. So that's why Negate is here instead of a Cryptic Command. And then moving on to our last spell in here besides our assault formation, we actually have 1 Settle the Wreckage. Because we have a lot of like defenders, our opponent is going to attack out every single turn they can if they have stuff that's in the air. Besides our hover barrier being able to block and our wall of denial, everything else is on the ground. So Settle the Wreckage is really here to make sure our opponent does not get comfortable attacking in on us. This is a 4 mana instant, exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That player may search his or her library for that many basic lands, put those cards on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. So again, if we have the mana, we want to make sure that this is happening on turn 5 or 6, something like that, to make sure our opponent is either getting in an alpha strike, which means they're swinging with all of their creatures, or to make sure that they're actually losing their biggest threats thanks to a Settle the Wreckage. Settle is also a great way to get around a lot of Eldrazi in the format too, so that's why there's a 1-of in the main board here. And of course, the last card in the main board here besides lands is a 4 of Assault Formation. We talked about this at the beginning of the deck tech, but again, this is a fantastic card for us, assigning combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Very, very powerful. It really does turn on 0/4s into 4/4s, which is ridiculous for us. If our opponent does not have a game 1 answer to Assault Formation, you better believe they're boarding in some kind of removal in the game too. So that's it for cards in the main board. Let's go on to lands really quickly. We just have 3 Botanical Sanctum, a very nice fast land for us, having for green and blue. We also have 2 Evolving Wilds, a good way to kind of hunt for lands for us. 2 Field of Ruin to make sure we actually can get rid of some non-basics that are going to give us a headache, preferably any kind of mana land, Celestial Colonnade, Raging Ravine, things like that. Next up here we have 3 Forest, 4 Island, 3 Plains, and then 3 Razor Verge Thicket, which is another fast land for us. It's coming in, tapping for green or white, and then 2 Seacrum Coast, which is tapping for blue and white. Again, you could always include fetch lands in here. You could always include a little bit more pricey cards, shock lands, things like that. I did not, to make sure our price is coming down to be a little more like budget playable for us. But if you have the budget and you want to go wild, I definitely recommend putting in some Flooded Strand, anything like that that's going to help increase the likelihood of you winning a match. I just cannot get over how expensive modern lands are. It really is disgusting. But that is the full 60, guys. Let's go over what we have in the sideboard here. We actually have 2 Ceremonious Rejection. This is a 1 mana instant counter target colorless spell. This is here for the Tron land stuff. This is here for that mono green Tron deck. This is here to make sure that if an opponent casts a Karn, or if they cast an Eldrazi that can be countered, we want to make sure Ceremonious Rejection is here to shut that down. Next up, we have 2 Condemn. This is a 1 white mana instant. Put target attacking creature on the bottom of its owner's library. Its controller gains life equal to its toughness. This is basically a decent removal spell for us. And if our opponent is attacking out with a token, this basically just kills the token, so we don't have to worry about seeing that token ever again. The best thing about this card is, if an opponent is attacking with a large creature, we can just Condemn it for 1 white mana. It goes to the bottom of their deck. They probably won't see it the rest of the game. They do get a slight health bump, but because we have a lot of like big bombs as far as creatures in our deck, we should be fine. Next up, we have a 2 of Spell Snare. This is a 1 blue mana instant counter target spell with converted mana cost equaling 2, which is quite a few cards in the format right now. That's Tarmogoyf, that's Negate, that's Snapcaster Mage, that's a lot of stuff. Spell Snare is going to come in against those fast strategies. Moving on to one more counter spell here, we actually have Disdainful Stroke. This is a 2-mana instant counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. Again, this is for a Karn or a like Tron style deck, a deck where our opponent's going to be playing these huge bombs for very, very cheap thanks to their Tron lands. Disdainful Stroke is a 2-of here to make sure that those strategies are shut down. Moving on to some graveyard heat, we actually have 2 Rest in Peace, a 2-mana enchantment. When Rest in Peace enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards. If a card or token would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So the one thing we want to keep in mind whenever we board in Rest in Peace, we want to make sure that Eternal Witness is being boarded out, as those are 2 cards that kind of like conflict with one another in our strategy. If we have cards that are exiled instead of being in our graveyard, Eternal Witness really isn't that useful to us. Next up, for some artifact hate, we actually have 2 Stoney Silence. This is a 2-mana enchantment. Activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. So during Fan Friday, we actually went up against a random modern like Marvel deck, Aetherworks Marvel deck. This card shut it down completely. Really happy about that because in game 1 they got out Emrakul and that's not fun. So Stoney Silence is here basically for that, and basically of course for the affinity decks in the format. Next up, for some added non-permanent removal, we have 2 Oblivion Ring. This is a 3-mana enchantment. When Oblivion Ring enters the battlefield, exile another target non-land permanent, and when Oblivion Ring leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control. This is basically coming in hoping to shut down any kind of Planeswalker in Modern, basically our Lilian of the Veil, that kind of stuff. Oblivion Ring is coming in for those particular matchups. And the last card in the sideboard for us is actually another copy of a specific card in the main board, and that is another Settle the Wreckage. So right now in Modern, there are so many like fast aggressive strategies. We want to make sure Settle the Wreckage is being a 2-of in here if we're going up against like a Grixis Death Shadow, or a Jund deck, or an Elf deck, stuff like that. Merfolk deck even. Settle the Wreckage is going to hopefully shut those strategies down and make sure we can actually kind of win the game that way. If our opponent is not suspecting it, Settle the Wreckage is a total blowout for 4 mana. But that is the full 75, guys. Let's go to the deck list here. On MTGO, it's coming to about 80 tickets, which is not bad at all. And in paper, if you want to build this is coming to about 225 bucks. Mainly being, of course, Birds of Paradise, Eternal Witness, Path to Exile, which is coming up on up there, Serum Visions, some of those fast lands there, and Spell Snare being another card, as well as Stoney Silence being a couple dollars there as well too. But this deck is all about playing out our mana producers, getting out a Soul Formation, playing our giant walls to hopefully defend ourselves until we get a Soul Formation out, get a Soul Formation out, turn our walls into huge attackers, and then swing for face. But that is the deck tech, guys. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you have any suggestions for it? I definitely want to know what your thoughts are down there. We'll definitely be commenting back as quickly as I can. And I'll definitely be giving a shout out in deck list to Nathan Ball, who actually had this list on Friday. I kind of did some tweaks myself to it, but I do think his list is also fun as well. But that's it for the video, guys. I love you all, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.